Hello everyone. Let us get started with the useState hook. So in the last video, we discussed about the fundamentals of React hooks. We understood that React hooks are nothing but the plain old JavaScript function, but having some special capability in the context of React. And today we'll be starting with the first built-in or standard hook called useState. In this video, we are going to understand what is the use of this particular hook and how to kind of take advantage of it in our programming, and then we will do one hands-on project using useState and then end it with a couple of special qualities of useState hook. You're with me? So let's get started. But before I do so, I would like to request you to subscribe to the channel because we keep sharing a lot of valuable content and we are going to share more and more in the coming days. Okay, so without any further delay, let's get started. Let us get started by explaining what exactly useState is. So useState is a built-in or standard React hooks. It means it is provided by React to declare and track the state variable's value of your component. Going back to our previous videos or the history, what is state? State is basically nothing but the data of your component that you deal with, and the data is required to hold certain values. And those are the values that you use in your JSX to render. Whenever there is a change in the state, whenever it's changed something in the state, what React does, React re-renders the part that has got changed, so your JSX part also gets changed. So state is a very, very important factor for a component to handle the value within the component, right? So we have seen that in our previous videos. Now, I told that to declare and to track. There are two things. One is like declaring and another is tracking the changes of the state. That is where useState hook is very, very important. So what we'll be doing now, we'll be seeing this syntax, the syntax I'm showing you on the screen, and we'll be breaking this syntax apart and try to understand the meaning of each of the elements in it, right? So let's do that. So if I read it from the left to right, it looks like const, then there is a bracket, state, set state equals to useState initial value. Now, if you are someone who is a newbie to JavaScript or React, you might find certain things strange in the syntax, but don't worry about it. Let's break it down so that we understand it completely. So first thing first. First, we'll be talking about the useState itself. useState is a built-in or standard hook to declare and manage state variable. It is a plain old JavaScript function. What does it mean? We have seen in the last video, every hook is nothing but a plain old JavaScript function. useState is one of them. Difference, we don't write it, React gives us. Then the second thing that we want to understand over here is called initial value. What is initial value? The useState function or the useState hook accepts an optional argument. Okay, it is optional. You may pass, you may not pass. If you don't pass, it is like undefined. But if you pass, there is a value. And it can be any valid JavaScript value. So it can be a number, it can be a boolean, it can be a string, it can be an object, it can be an array, it can be a function also. Now, if we pass a function as an argument to useState hook, it has a very special usage. We will cover that towards the end of this video. Okay. But for now, it is an initial value that you set to the state variable. That is what this initial value is about. Now, once you pass this initial value to this useState hook, it has few responsibilities. The responsibility is it returns two things. The things that we see at the left, one is called state, another is called set state. What exactly these are? The state is a variable, basically a variable, JavaScript variable that holds the current value of the state variable. It is written by the useState hook. So useState hook returns the current value of the state. You pass the initial value and it returns the current value of the state. The next, a function that is nothing but used to update the state value. So whenever we want to update this state value, for example, there is a counter state value which is initialized with 0 and we want to update it to 1, we won't be updating it directly. We won't be updating this state variable directly. Rather than that, we will be taking advantage of the set state method and we'll be updating the state variable. That is the fourth thing. Why we'll be doing that? I'll be coming to that in a while. And the last thing that I see in this syntax is the last point is const. Most of us know that this is nothing but a JavaScript keyword to declare constant variables. Okay. Now, you may be wondering what is this brackets are about. These brackets are nothing but the JavaScript destructuring syntax that got introduced in ES6. What it means by that, instead the useState actually returns an array. In that array, there are two elements. One is the current value of the state, and another is the function. Instead of declaring like const state and this the array of 0 and then array of 1 like that, we are actually taking the return array and destructuring it into these two variables. Destructuring an array means you actually taking out the element of an array. At the same time, you're assigning them to the variable as a value. So that's what we are doing. So at a high level, this is what this useState is supposed to do. Okay, so we just now told that we should not kind of change the state variable value directly. Whenever we want to change a value of a state, we should use the setState function to do that. But why so? What is the need? Why can't I just do state equals to 1, state equals to 2? Why have to do like setState then passing the value 1 or passing the value 2? Why you have to do that? It is because we have mentioned in our previous videos that React uses something called a virtual DOM. It doesn't update the actual DOM, the original DOM directly, right? So what it does basically, it has a virtual DOM. All the updates happen to the virtual DOM. Then there is a diffing happen, the differentiation algorithm, the diffing algorithm happen between the virtual DOM and the actual DOM. And only the portion that has got changed or updated, the React is going to re-render that part, right? So that's the reason your entire website or entire web page doesn't get refresh, re-render. It is just the part of it is kind of re-render. So this is very efficient. Now what happened is like, when we actually re-render a component, all its children and everything by default kind of gets re-rendered. Now by default children are getting re-rendered doesn't mean that entire DOM tree is getting re-rendered, right? That's why we have this virtual DOM concept. Now if we change, I will use the term called mutate. So mutability and immutability, these two are again bit heavy jargons, but when it comes to the normal meaning, it means mutate means changing something is changeable. Immutable means something is not changeable. In functional programming, immutability is embraced very, very tightly. So it means that if I have an option to mutate something, I should not do it, because once you mutate something, once you change something directly, it is very, very difficult to keep a track of from what point this has been changed. If something is immutable, if something is not changeable after its declaration, and for changing something or update something, you have to create a new instance, it is much easier to kind of track and manage. React utilizes the same philosophy when it comes to virtual DOM. So if I directly mutate this state, so it means wherever the references of states are there, everywhere I am changing directly. So it means in the previous references or all these references getting changed, so I don't have anything to compare between the original DOM and the virtual DOM. What setState will do, setState will never ever change this original references of state. It create a new reference, and with the new reference and the old reference is an opportunity to compare, and with the comparison, if there is a change, then only is going to re-render. So to keep the tracking of state in terms of virtual DOM and then kind of updating to re-render your component, that's why you should not mutate this state variable directly, rather you should use the setState function. I hope you understood this. Alright, so time for our project where we will be using this useState hook and try to learn how to use it in programming and learn a bit nitty-gritty about that. So our project for today is called Colorize. We'll be using a lot of colors and try to build something cool, simple but effective. And along with learning useState, we'll also be learning a few nitty-gritties about it, which may not be directly related to useState but definitely related to React. So you're with me? Let's get started. All right, so we have the create React app used for this particular project. I have created the basic skeleton and it is kind of running. And by default, the thing that we do usually is like just take out things from here, and we don't need it, clean them up. We don't need this logo, clean it up, and then save it. Okay, for now probably we are going to get a blank screen. We are good with this for now. Now we'll start doing our project. So today project is like Colorize. So what we'll be doing is like we'll be first creating a component called Colorizer. So to create the component, what I'll do, I will go over here under src, just do a right click, new file, and create a component called colorize.js. And inside colorize.js, let's start coding the component ground up from the beginning and see like how to build it. So our intention is like we'll be maybe creating a div and then one button. And when we click on the button, on every click, our intention is to change the color of that div, background color of the div, right? So that's what the project is about. But we'll be building it step by step and try to understand how useState kind of applies here and work out. Okay, so first create this component called say const colorizer, and of course it's a component. So here's a function, and then let us return for now nothing but a simple div, say class name equals to colorizer, and then have maybe a text call colorizer, so that I can test like it is working. And then what I'm going to do, as usual, export default colorizer. I am exporting this particular component. Now as this component is done, what I'm going to do now, take this guy, import it into app.js so that I can test it out. Import colorizer from /colorizer, and then in here instead of blank stuff, let's just do this guy. So what I'm expecting now is like the text colorizer start appearing over here. Okay, there is an error. Let's try to fix it. Of course, the error is basically because the file name is Colorize, it's not Colorizer. So let's just change this and fix it. All right, so as you see here, the Colorizer text is coming over here. So the next thing that we want to do is like we want to get a div inside that and a button. That's what we intended to, and we'll be changing the color of the div. So we'll be going there and removing it, and let's create a div, say class name equals to, we'll give a class name say box, because we'll be creating it like a box, and then closing the div. And then what we'll do is like we'll create a button. Let's create a button, give a name of it, say change color, right? So we have this, we have a div and we have a button change color, and we have removed the color. We don't see the div over here. Obvious reason is because by default the div, though the division is there in the UI, but it doesn't have any styling elements, so you don't see it. So what we can do is basically we can quickly go to app.css file, yes, over here, and try removing all possible things from here, everything, just remove everything, and then start coding some basic CSS. So we have, I think I named it as colorizer, yes. So let's copy colorizer, go over here, put colorizer, and then start putting some style. So let's do display flex, flex direction we'll do as column, because we want to kind of show first the div and then the button. So this is done, flex direction column, and then kind of align items as center. And then we can do last thing is like justify content, we can do like center, right? So this is the outer part of the UI that we are doing. Like first we have done the div and then the button, and then align them correctly. Now the next thing what we can do is like let's do a little bit style of this particular guy, the box, right? So colorizer.box. So let's go to app.css .colorizer space box, right? And for this one, what we can do is like, let's give it a width of maybe some 13 rem, and then let's give it a height as well, so that you can see it very clearly of 13 rem, so that we're giving like a square, making like a square. Let's give it a margin of 1 rem, so that there is a difference, there is a distance between this div and the button over there. And then let's give a padding of maybe of 1 rem, so that whatever text that we'll be putting inside the div having some kind of padding. We will give a border. Now this div will start appearing in any moment, right? And let's give a color. I don't know which color I'm going to give. Let's pick a 521D1D. Yeah, something brownish red. Okay, not a problem. And then let's give a border radius, so that we can see the edges are kind of little bit curvy, and we'll be giving like 0.5 rem. I think I'm good with that. So let's save this guy and see, like, see the div is now there. Div is very much there. It has a border color as well. We have not given any background color, so it doesn't have any background color. The last thing that we want to do at this point of time is like on this button, we might want to put just a cursor, pointer cursor. So just do Colorize and then the button, and then we do cursor is pointer. I think we are done with all the basic styling. Now we have a component which is having a div and then a button. My objective is to, whenever I click on this button, the color of this background color of this div changes, right? Now the background color of the div is the state, the value that this component wants to track. So the changes means the changes has to be tracked. So for that, we'll be using the useState hook. So to do this useState hook, the first thing that we need to do is to import it. Okay, so import useState from React. That's the first thing that we'll be doing. So let's import it. Great. So we have imported this guy from React. And then the next thing is, let's define this variable. Now to define the variable, remember the syntax. First is the const, right? That is, the keyword. And then the variable name, the state variable name, any name that you can give of your choice. I give color. And then set color is the method to update this particular state variable. And then we have, I'm just closing this so that we can get the visibility. Then we have this useState. And with useState, I need to have a default value. Let's give any default value for now. Maybe a value of say 6D0E0E. I also don't know like which color is going to be. I'm just taking it as random. All right. So we have this guy. Now I have defined a state variable and have an initial value of this. Now what I can do is like straight away, very straight away, I can use this color for this div. To do that, let's add the style attribute, and the style attribute dynamically I can add this background color. Now to do that, in the CSS style, whatever properties are there, all these properties you can use. However, you have to pay an extra attention. That's how the properties like, background hyphen color, font hyphen size, all these property names doesn't have, exact usage in terms of JSX, right? In JSS, those become camel case. So for example, background hyphen color, to set the background color of an HTML element using CSS, you won't be using it as background hyphen color over here. You will be using as background and then the capital C color, and then you will do the colon, and then you use the value that you want to set as a background color. So what we have done here, we have done a style, then did a background color, and then setting this color as a background color. You see this background color has got changed. So this is cool, right? So we have a state variable now declared, and with the state variable coming in effect immediately, we are able to do this. Now the next thing that we want to do over here is like we want to click on this button, and on the click on this button, we want to change the color of it, right? So that's the next thing. Now to achieve that, what we have to do, we have to add a click handler. So how do I add a click handler? In HTML, JavaScript, normally HTML, JavaScript, you used to do it like on click. Similarly, over here we'll be doing it using on click again, but there are few key differences that you need to kind of note. For example, in JavaScript, it is like OHCLICK, all are small, but in case of React, the C is capital, camel case again. And then what you have to do is like here, you have to call the function that will be invoked when somebody perform the click operation on this button. So let's define that. So it will be defined like, say, change color. Now this is great, but you know, in kind of HTML JavaScript side, you won't be doing it in this way. You will be doing like on clicks equals to as a string, you will be doing change color and then with a parenthesis. So how we will be doing in normal JavaScript is like something like this: a change color, then like this, like this. So we'll be doing something like this. But in React, no, not like that, because it is JSX. You remember in the previous class we have discussed about this. This is JSX. So you have to give like this parenthesis, and inside that all the methods, all the expressions will be evaluated. And also you ignore this parenthesis, because if you give this parenthesis, this method will be executed here itself. It will be invoked here itself. We don't want that. We want to pass this change controller function reference to the on click function, so that whenever it clicks, then only it gets invoked. We don't want it to be invoked here. We will discuss more about these things when it comes to the event handling with React in the future videos, but for now I think this is good. So next thing is to define this particular function at the top. So let's define this function. Let's call const change controller, and then if I do like say console.log of color change. So this is how I prefer doing development, is like incremental. So first I want to check whether my event handler at least working or not, and if the event handler is working, then only I'll go to the next step. Otherwise I won't go to next step. I already see it is failing, so let us first fix why exactly it is failing. Of course, I have missed one big thing over here. What it is? The big thing over here is the equals. So now things should work. All right, and now if I open up the console with pressing F12, so if I now click on this, you see over here, see, every time I'm clicking, the color change is incrementing. So it means it is working. The invocation of this guy is working perfectly. So next thing that we'll be doing, we'll start writing the code for changing the color. Now let's change the color once. So to change the color, we won't be doing say color equals to green. We know the reason by now, like why we won't be mutating the state directly, right? Because we will be confusing React. Now what we'll be doing instead of that, we'll be doing like set color of green. So if I do this, whenever I am clicking on this change color stuff, this is gonna change the color of it, right? So let's do that. You saw that I clicked on it, color change happened, it triggered, and the color changed to green. So it means I have changed the state value, and the state value change happened. useState returned me the current value of it, which is green, and this is the green I am using over here, and things are quite well working. Now the last part that you want to do of the project is like every time I click on this button, I want to change this color to a new color. So it means I have to now define a function which will give me a random color. So let's do that. So let us write a function to get a random color. So here is a simple kind of logic to generate a 6-digit hex notation, using the math random, and then we can actually prefix the hash, and then it's supposed to generate say a random color for us, random color hexadecimal syntax for us. Now what we're going to do is like say we'll do like return random. That's fair enough. Now here, after coming here, we can do like, we can use this function like const random color equals to get random color. Okay, and let's say that color change with random color, and let's do the spelling correct, random color. And then the final thing that we want to do is we'll be passing this, instead of green, the random color itself. So now if I click on this button, the things gets changed. It will return me this hex code, a new hex code, random hex code every time, and that hex code will be I'm setting as a new value, and the value will be changed. So let's see that in action. So you ready for it? See both in the console and this box. When I click change color, you see every time I'm changing, it's changing. It's great, right? So, and the last thing that we want to do is like I want to print the color, the hexacode basically over here. That is easy. I know that you got it by now. That's all it is, because the color variable, state variable, is having the latest value. So now every time I change, the value that I'm printing in the console is also gets printed over here, right? So let's see that. So you see over here, so if you change color, you see that it's getting changed. So this is great. So now we understood, like, how to use useState for this state value declaration and the tracking purpose, and how the JSX gets changed, why we should not be changing the state variable value directly, why we'll be using the useState kind of thing. This particular example will be available in the GitHub. You can always kind of check in and try it out. Why don't you kind of extend it to make this particular hex code placed in the middle in a proper color. Try out certain things to do with this particular app, extend this project. That will be really great thing to learn. Okay, so the next thing, the last part of this particular video is to talk about two very special thing about useState. That usage of that might not be very frequent, but you might use it sometime in your programming life. So let's learn that as well. Now we'll be learning two very important concepts about useState. Okay, these are not very widely used concept, but it is very good to know. So the first concept is called lazy initialization of the state. How to initialize a state? You pass the initial value as an argument to the useState hook. As simple as that. The initial value, if it is simple data like a number, string, etc., we are good with how we are seeing it here, right? But at times you may want to initialize the state with a computed value. And the computation can be intense and time-taking activity. It could be a kind of disk call, it could be from local storage, it could be from somewhere which is taking a lot of time. Now with useState hook, you can pass a function as an argument. You remember initially we told like any valid JavaScript value you can pass. Function is a valid JavaScript value. So you can pass a function as an argument to initialize the state lazily. Okay, the initial value is needed only once at the first render. Remember, this is a very important concept. The initial value is needed only once at the first render. There is no point in performing the heavy computation on the subsequent renders at all. So it means if I am doing something really heavy stuff, I can pretty well do that as a function over here. So as a function, let's do as an array function, and I can return it from here. So for this example sake, let us do something like this. I'll be taking one code that will generate a random function for us. So this is the code for generating the random function, math.floor, math.random into 16. So just pretend that this is a heavy computation and it is produce a number instead of putting at the outside, and then the heavy computation takes outside, and then rest of the component workflow gets blocked. Instead of that, I want to lazily initialize this so that it gets initialized only once, and for every rendering happening, this heavy computation doesn't get performed again and again. All right, so this is the first thing that you want to learn. So I have initialized with a random number which is 15. The next thing that you want to learn is how to get the previous state data and use it. Now there is a method called increment by 3, which I am calling on click of this button. So if I click on this button, at this point I won't see other than this console.log, but because it doesn't have anything else. But I can always increment it by 3, like set counter, calling set counter, take the counter value which is the current value and do counter plus 3. It will be incremented by 3. No problem with that. But in case you want to really rely on a previous value, you want to get the previous value from React, the React ecosystem, and then want to utilize it, you have a way to do that. How do you do that? You use same set counter, the setter function, and the setter function, you can actually pass a callback. The callback gives you the previous value, and you can actually use this previous value to do whatever you want to do. So this is the way that you can do. Otherwise, the first approach could be set counter plus 3, right? Both works in this case. In this particular context, both works, but this guarantees that there will be a previous value always, and using that previous value you are doing this. Isn't that amazing? Basically, you can utilize it wherever you need this previous value explicitly, right? Now you might say, like, when this is actually returning the result, why am I using this? Okay, so in this case the prev is guaranteed to have the previous state value, whereas there could be cases that relying on just the counter value may not give you the previous state value. Okay, particularly it can happen when you update the state on an event, say click event in this case, and the event occurs very fast. So in that case, it might happen the state update may not happen as expected, because the on-click props, in this case this is the on-click props function, this is the on-click prop function, it actually creates a closure on the counter value. If you're new to closure, please read about JavaScript closure a bit. I am going to create a closure and scope video very soon, so that I can clarify that as well. So if the on-click triggers so fast, the counter value may not get updated constantly as expected. Using the previous state, it is guaranteed to get executed. Okay, so what we can do is basically we can see like how it is getting changed. I'll just refresh this one for a while, doing hard refresh, so you can see that every time I'm clicking, it is actually increasing, so increasing. Okay, so this is good. So now what we can do is, like, we understood every bit of useState. We will be able to utilize useState everywhere. Now what we want to do is, like, next is, like, we want to get into our next hook called useEffect. You remember in the hooks fundamental video we spoke about side effects and the pure components. So we will talk about those side effects and how to kind of tackle those side effects, a little bit about component lifecycle and the useEffect hook, how it come into picture, utilization of the useState and useEffect together. That's what the focus of our future video is going to be. So please subscribe to this channel if you have not done already, so that you can stay updated with the content that I produce. Until then, please take a great care of yourself. I'll be back very soon with the useEffect video next. Thank you very much.